Slowly it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict, and this 65 Lincoln Continental Convertible just posted in the last couple of hours on Bring a Trailer. Of course, I get notifications when they post, and I pushed back another video or two for a couple of days so that I could jump right on this one. I think it's a nice car overall. I think someone's going to get something that they really appreciate. Let's take a semi-deep dive into this 65 Lincoln Continental Convertible. The front three-quarter shot, we can see it is the Arctic white, or just, white in general, and with red interior. I think it's a very classy color combination. 65s, I've said this before, arguably, some people love the 4s and 5s, and there's other people that really love the 1s, 2s, and 3s. One of the biggest differences in the 61 through 3s versus the 4 and 5 is they were lengthened those few inches that you'll often hear people mention or comment about. So the car was lengthened just a little bit to add the legroom in the rear. The glass is not curved glass. So on the sides, you've heard me talk about 64, 65 has that flat glass. And then, of course, the aesthetics of the front and rear. 65 is 1 year only. Each of the years are pretty much 1 year only, but basically in 64, you did not have the turn signals in the front fenders. In 65, you do. So from the side shot, as I mentioned in the past, you could tell a 64 versus a 65 by these lenses, if you will. When we look at this information, it is in Colorado, and this was purchased in 2019, so the current owner has had it a good 4 to 5 years. Now, this car, when I first saw it, I was trying to think of, there was a guy that followed me in Colorado through social media, Lincoln Addict, and he had a few Lincolns, and he would sell one, then he'd buy another one. This seems like a car that I recall seeing in social media in the past, but basically it still has the 430. It has the 15-inch wheels. It is an AC car, and when we look at some of the other details, this is all kind of standard information here. The car was delivered in white. Of course, they don't really go into the color other than that, which is fine. It does have a replacement power-operated white convertible top. So that's one thing. So that's been replaced, which is a good thing. It has an Optima. It says Hankook Optima white wall tires. Okay, so we got that. The interior to me looks stunning. I have a red 65 with red interior, and I absolutely love it. I was never a fan of red cars, let alone now I have a red car with red interior. To me, I really love this, especially against the white. You pull up at a show or a little cruise-in or whatnot, and people are just blown away, especially when they walk up and they look in the four-door convertible and they see all that red. It really sticks out and makes a statement. There is a retro-style Bluetooth radio. I believe that is in the glove box, which we'll see. Some of the other stuff is the standard stuff. Looking right here, it looks like it just has the regular AM radio. Remember, AM, FM was an option. It does not have the Atronic eye for the automatic headlight dimmer. So those are a couple of features that sometimes will be on these cars. We, of course, know it has AC. Something I don't always point out is if this was a non-AC car, these vents would not be present. So in 64, 65, this long dash bezel, if you will, this is different in the 4s and 5s if it's a non-AC car. So this one has the vents, of course. So that's the giveaway. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but it does have the Dakota digital gauges. So you see these white face gauges. You've got your 4 pods, and then you have your speedometer, clock, and other information here. That's a nice subtle upgrade in my opinion. So we'll hit upon that, I'm sure, a little bit more. The digital odometer shows less than 100 miles. That would have been from the point that they swapped to the digital Dakota. I think you can actually program it to whatever the mileage was, but that's neither here nor there. Of course, it has the MEL 430. Here's a key thing. These older carbureted engines, oftentimes you're going to have folks that want to kind of modernize them a little bit, but they want to keep the factory power plant. What they've done is they've added the Holley Sniper fuel injection. the cool thing about that is you can't even really tell based upon looking at this image or at a show, and it's because basically they take off the carburetor, and that Holley sniper kit basically replaces the carb, and you can't even tell. There's obviously a little bit of wiring that goes with it for powering ground and whatnot, but it essentially adds in like a fuel injection style, the best you can have with a carbureted engine. So that's kind of a cool thing. They're becoming more popular. I think Holley's Sniper, in my opinion, is one of the better ones. There have been a couple others on the market that a buddy of mine had, and it hasn't done as well, but they've continued to get better. There's slight customization in here, which I don't think is bad at all. You've got the red valve covers. You've got the red, this could be powder coat or paint, so where you're checking your power steering fluid. And you see the red for the oil cover there where you pour the oil in. Now, I know you might be looking at this going, hey, Jason, it has the 2-port, not the 3-port. If you take a look at this hose, this is basically capped off because this mechanical fuel pump is no longer being utilized. And I know you're thinking, well, why leave it there? Well, unless you find like a little block-off plate or something to screw over that, there's places that make those little block-off plates. You basically end up leaving it on there because you don't want anything to get in there. You can't have that open, if you will. You certainly could leave this just for the aesthetics of it, but that's what they've done for the most part. But again, it does have the Holley Sniper kit, which is a nice kit, I think, overall. And they do point out some of the other items there that I mentioned. So there is corrosion visible on the underside. So I think what we saw in a recent, or what you're going to see in an upcoming video, I pushed it back. I think Bring a Trailer is doing a good job. I mean, it's a very basic statement, but it's reinforcing. It's kind of, they don't want to ever lead you down the fact that, oh, this car is perfect underneath, because a lot of these cars, let's be honest, they're 60 years old. They've been driven, some harder than others. Using that sentence, corrosion's visible, that kind of gives them a little bit of a blanket statement to say, hey, it's not perfect underneath. A shop manual will accompany the car along with catalogs and factory style decals and stuff. We'll see some photos. This, I believe, is from Brewer. He sells this troubleshooting kit. This is great to have. I have a couple of these. And just in the event that you ever buy one of these cars, or let's say you own one, you kind of have to acquaint yourself a little bit, because God forbid you take your car to another state or you go to a show far away and you are having a hiccup. You need to be able to put the top up or down, even in an emergency type situation. So like having something like this to let you know on how to maybe jump some relays and do some things is a big help. There are some videos, and I give kudos. Again, Bring a Trailer, I think, continues to do a great job with these short videos where they're reinforcing to the sellers, what they need. Of course, right now it's not wanting to play, and I don't think it's my internet connection, but you never know. There we go. Again, I think white looks fantastic. I mean, if I was in the market for a 65, we haven't really got through everything. I would certainly say, this car to me, I think it's going to do pretty well. Based upon what I've seen so far. So this is kind of just your general walk around, kind of some of the key highlights of the car. Of course, it doesn't have the right floor mats. No big deal. I kind of like these clear ones. I mean, you want to have something in there to protect it. I mean, sure, you might end up changing them out. I've got a nice set in my car that Robert installed or put it in the car, but overall, I don't think those look bad. The top actuation, so we talk about the importance of this. You've got the person sitting in the car. I have the sound turned down. It's probably running, but the foot is on the brake, which is key. You've got your deck unlock, then your deck lid up. The flapper went up. Once the flapper goes up, it unlocks up here at the header panel. It goes into the trunk. It's going to basically, once it's fully in there, it's going to fully press the switch. And once it tells it that it's fully in the trunk, then you've got your deck lid that comes down. And the last piece is the locks these locks are spinning right now. And that's going to help fasten it down and kind of align it, is really what the main purpose of it is. So we see that as well. We've got the engine starting, and the last but not least, I think, is the driving video. I did want to show you this to kind of show you, again, I think this person did a good job. They had someone else with them so that they don't have to try to like do this stuff themselves. The red, I truly feel, is a great color for these interiors. And I'm going to jump through this. They kind of do, I think, a closer up here. You can see the gauges. And I know there's some people that don't necessarily like these gauges. You have to think that if you don't have someone around you like I do with Blair, you may not easily be able to have work done on these cars. And we talk about the amp gauge that has to be either bypassed or upgraded, or in this case, replaced with Dakota Digital gauges. But by the person having these installed or doing it themselves, the key is now you have all functioning gauges. And I think that's a key thing. There are two options. You can do a white set, which you see here, or you can do black. They're about $800 to $1,000 for this setup, and it includes the new senders. You think like oil pump sender or oil pressure sender, where that is screwed in. That then has the wire that goes back to the back of the gauge, and that tells, it tells you, where you're at. And I think that's a key thing. I actually want to install some on my Blue 64 at some point. So those are the videos. What we see here, I think they may have hired Bring a Trailer, or they may have taken these themselves. It looks like kind of more professional photos. If it was the seller, then certainly they kind of went over to an area that wasn't super populated, and they've taken a lot of good photos, right? They've got the top up, they've got the top down, and I think taking photos of both is key, because you kind of want to show folks everything in terms of, the way the car is going to look. We can see here, it looks like someone with a tripod, so it might be some professional photos there. Of course, Colorado plate. When we look at the bright work, I think this looks really good. Oftentimes these cars were kind of babied a little bit over the course of time. You can kind of usually tell if it's been a car that's been, stored inside and all that stuff. But something, if I was looking at this car, I'd want to put my kind of fingers up here and kind of look and kind of see, is there any corrosion or anything up in here? Obviously, you see a little bit of stuff going on, but sometimes this is normal on these cars. It could also be that the paint job wasn't, it could have been like a respray. Sometimes you'll see the paint peeling in here. But certainly, I think like what I've seen so far on this car, it kind of gives me the feel of, an original car that's been maintained fairly well from what we've seen, and like a driver type quality, a car that you would get in and cruise and just have a good time. The hubcaps typically are not high-speed polished. In this case, they are. So those wheel covers, if you will, those have been high-speed polished, and they look good, I think. If you were looking for them to be kind of that factory accurate, you would certainly have to get another set, and those are available kind of like through eBay and the normal usual suspects, as we call them. This passenger mirror is not factory. There was a company called Classique, and there's a couple of other folks, I think, that sell these. This, to me, is a nice custom touch. And by custom, I know what you're thinking. You're going, hey, what do you mean custom? Well, these cars did not have a passenger mirror. It's not too bad driving with the top down, but when the top is up, it does really help to have that extra mirror. So basically what you end up doing is screwing or drilling two little holes, which unfortunately you have to do, but you have to drill the holes, and you've got this little base here, the black. I helped Tony put one on his car. You measure obviously from the other side, and you figure out exactly where it goes. And then you want to make sure your vent window opens, of course. You've measured correctly, and then you can install that. So kind of a cool thing. Of course, with the interior, it looks really nice. It's hard to tell. I'm assuming that it is leather, but they've also went in and given you some detailed photos, right? Kind of showing the little imperfections. And so, some of this would maybe drive you crazy. At the end of the day, a lot of that could be remedied if you just get a nice paint job down the road. Oftentimes, these cars are getting harder to find. especially the convertibles. So I think it's worth noting that a lot of people want to get a nice car like this that they can get in and drive and cruise, and maybe 5, 10, 15 years down the road, they're going to maybe restore it, right? Do a full paint job, do everything underneath the car and whatnot. Again, with the seats, I think they look fantastic. It does look like leather to me. Let me know what you think. 65 did not have rear seat belts unless it was an option. I think it was like $10 or $15. And it's cool to see. I assume that these are the factory belts. My 65 has these as well, and that's because Robert sourced them from another 65 and installed them. So it's kind of a cool thing. So that is one additional feature that it has. Oftentimes this knob is broken off, so it's good that they're showing you that. I know I'm going a little quick through some of this. Some appreciate it. Some probably think I'm talking a little too quick. But what I want to do is keep these as efficient as possible and kind of get the most content out. You'll often see on 64, 65, this little ring that's in here, you can't really see it. That is often missing, and I do believe it is missing here on this. Yes, it is on this car. We call that a unicorn item because oftentimes as this lower dash panel is removed or this ignition piece is taken out, this little ring that says ignition on it is often, falls on the floor, it gets thrown away, it breaks, whatever. So you'll often see that without this. Maybe I'll talk about that more in the future, but I think there is someone that had planned to remake those. I know Tony and Lincoln Land, they also sell them for a pretty good amount of money for an original one. Under the doors is a place that you always want to check. You might look at this and go, wow, it looks bad. A lot of these cars kind of look like this. You just want to make sure it's not really, really rotten out. My blue 64, eventually, if I ever do a complete restoration, I'll have some work done underneath the doors. But, they're usually not perfect there. The same thing can be said for in here. You always want to kind of take a look and kind of see. These are pretty clean. This is telling us right here that it's obviously been resprayed at some point. You can kind of just tell if you've been around cars for a while that there's some overspray in there. Certainly, I think so far, again, to reiterate what I said earlier, this is a nice car. I'd love to buy this car. If I had any more space, I certainly would be looking to add this one if I could. These window switches, obviously you can see this is the press down. This needs to be, I don't know if this is broken underneath or if it needs a screw in it, but obviously that needs to, kind of a simple fix, if you will, in case you notice that. Looking under the deck lid in the trunk area, the deck lid has, some things here that are a little suspect. Certainly this looks solid overall, and it's got the normal stuff that you're going to see, but you can see a little bit of the discoloration around here, kind of that rust color, but I don't think there's anything that's kind of a deal breaker. 65, these are 1 year old or 1 year only pieces that cover up these interior pieces, if you will. It's pretty, I don't want to say rare to see them. It's pretty frequent that you'll see them without these. But this car looks pretty nice, and if you look at the trunk area and what they often refer to as the toilet seat, the cover here for the spare tire, you'll see that it does look pretty nice overall in the trunk. Now, this is another area of potential concern. You always want to check here, especially 64, 65, because the weather stripping moves from the deck lid to the actual body of the car right here. And over the course of time, moisture and leaves, depending on where the car is sitting, you could see a little bit of cracking in here. It's probably just the paint, but you would want to double check to make sure there's no major rust there. In addition, you guys have heard me talk about 64, 65. You need to add the bar over this nub right here across. I have a video on my channel. It's not something that you have to freak out and say, oh my God, I don't want to work the top without doing that. But it's something you really need to do. And that's something John Cashman was probably the first person to really push for years and years and years during his operation of his company. But there's a piece that you can install here. And again, there is a video on my channel, and I talk about why you have to do that. Again, you can kind of see in here the little bit of discoloration, not the end of the world. The other thing I wanted to point out is these pads. You've maybe heard me say in the past, oftentimes these are missing. They're removed during something being done on the car, or then they're thrown out or discarded. These pads, one on each side, are kind of getting harder to find. It's basically where the top, when it comes back in, it kind of just rests on these big plastic, kind of roll hard plastic, I think they are, pieces, one on each side. As we start to close this down, again, they're showcasing that the paint is not perfect. There are some minor imperfections. We can see the 430 there. It does have the AC, so all this looks original because it has this this piece here. If you're doing the full upgrade, I have another video on my channel. This muffler, if you will, that can be removed if you're doing that. But we do see the originality there is the key thing. A lot of times, and I'm sure some of you can attest to this, you want a car that's more original, that hasn't really been messed with, that allows for you the freedom to either restore it or do what you want with it. Now, again, they mentioned corrosion. You might look at this and go, wow, this looks pretty bad. It's hard to say in a photo. This could just be kind of that surface rust, that surface corrosion, if you will. I'm pretty OCD when it comes to this stuff, so I would probably want to eventually scrape this the best I could and paint it and make it look nice. Unfortunately, they do not have access to a lift, so these are the best photos we're going to get. In addition, I have bent my own fuel lines out of aluminum all the way down the driver's side of the car. You can see what someone did here is they've just taken fuel line, hopefully it's fuel line, and they've ran that all the way to the front to the back. Not necessarily anything wrong with that. It's not factory accurate if that was a concern for you, but you could always have someone bend a new line. It's certainly easier to do it if you have the original, because you can use the original as your guide, if you will. We can see some bolts have been changed underneath the car. Obviously, they look a little bit newer. And you could kind of judge from there if you think it's, what you think of it. I don't think this is necessarily bad. Remember, a lot of people don't spend a ton of time cleaning underneath their car. They just get in and cruise it. The main thing you want to make sure is there's no major rust. Also, this gives us a good perspective underneath the rear bumper. Typically, you'll sometimes see some stuff here, and this looks pretty good. We do see a dent ding, if you will, on these bumper inserts. I do sell these custom made, and that's something there that I noticed. We can see the exhaust. The exhaust has been done at some point, which is a good thing. Everything looks pretty much up to par there. And as we start to close this out, okay, so I noticed this right before I started this video. It does appear on the passenger side that the floor panel was replaced. And I know most people would scan over this pretty quick. How would you know that? Well, look how flat this looks. There's no factory. It doesn't have this undercoating, that rough texture. So, it's not the end of the world if floor pans are replaced in a car, but you want to maybe take a look and go, okay, was there just rust in those few spots and they replaced it? They had someone kind of bend some sheet metal and boom, they fixed it. You would just want to make sure that the car doesn't have anything else going on there. It would be great if we had photos before the carpet was put back down, but certainly a lot of people aren't going to go through the time to take those and provide those for an auction like this. These are some of the stickers that were mentioned. The master catalog parts. You have the maintenance manual, which this one is huge. It's kind of like the Bible to these cars. And then here's a master parts catalog. Of course, this is 60 to 62. Doesn't 100% apply to this car. Some of the things do, but certainly it's fantastic that they're including these type of things. We don't really see any receipts, but I think what we're seeing is a solid car. Someone doesn't like the modern dash, which obviously we talked about, and great refurbishment. Of course, I chimed in as well from Lincoln Addict. But let me know what you guys think. I think it's a solid car in my opinion. It's not perfect, but certainly to get a 65, that's a nice car. I'd have to imagine this car is going to go for a decent amount. And I say that because if we looked at recent convertibles like the 66, 37, I think was a strong number for it. The one that I think had some lineage to Nathan Wilson sold for $63,000. But to me, this car is easily going to do $60,000 to $70,000, if not more. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for the support. Stay on the rise.